Welcome to Confessions by Banana Ketchup. I'm finally ready to talk about her. I will preface by saying I think I'm silly to believe in ghosts and I get embarrassed to speak about it. The alternative to believing I was haunted is admitting I'm much more mentally ill than I thought, which is absolutely possible. You're welcome to offer logical explanations. This took place over a few years in a farmhouse in the desert of Arizona. It was newly developed land. We moved into the place when I was 15. At the time, I was going through a lot emotionally and smoking a lot of weed. This might explain some of my personal experiences, so I'll try not to dwell on them too much. The house was set up almost plantation style. It was very wide and narrow, a big wraparound porch and lots of awkward corners. The front room was a tall library with an open balcony to the upstairs, which ran into long skinny bedrooms. My parents' room was closest to the stairs and attached to a nursery with a sliding ensuite door. My brothers, 2 years younger, and my room were at the end of a dark hallway. That side of the house never got sun, so it was bad vibes all around. Downstairs, there was a ducked-up Harry Potter-style closet, a sunken living room, a kitchen in the center of the house, and a sunken playroom for the baby. It honestly started the first day we moved in. My brother and I were the only ones in the house, unboxing plates. The place was so empty, everything echoed. I swear it sounded like a little girl laughed, like a creepy track you could get off an app or something. Keep in mind the TVs were not plugged in. We were on an acre of land far away from the dirt road, and my brother was way too stupid to pull a prank like that. I started hearing voices at night. This wasn't unusual. I honestly used to freak myself out so badly, I think I made up noises to scare myself. My parents had raised me not to talk about things scaring me, to tough it out and be a bad girl. It was fine most of the time during the day. Everything came at night. I remember distinctly when it started messing with me in bed. In solidarity, my brother and I kept our bedroom doors open for the hallway nightlight, and in case we needed to call for each other. We had a pretty ducked-up childhood that might have contributed to all the codependency I'll describe during this. I was falling asleep, but not quite out. I felt the blanket slipping off the bed and reached down to grab it. This was common. I didn't have a bed frame with a foot. It kept slipping no matter how I tried to tuck it. In classic horror movie fashion, the last time I pulled it, I felt tension. There was nothing it could have been caught on. I feel like the second I went from confused to terrified, it bounced back to me. I don't know how to explain this well, but I was sure someone was under the bed, pulling it from me. Later, I moved another nightlight into the bedroom. It was a kind of spooky amber orange, and I convinced my parents to let me paint the walls cherry red. Again, I was almost asleep, but not quite asleep, so I don't think it could have been sleep paralysis. I heard the carpet rustle and maybe joints cracking. It sounded like my mom had come to check on me. I opened my eyes and immediately froze. I don't think I've ever been more scared in my life. There was a woman crawling across my floor, from the far side of my room to the foot of my bed. She was pale and stringy-haired like she was going bald. I couldn't see her face. I don't know how I fell asleep. I couldn't scream or move. I think she disappeared under my bed. Again, this could be a hallucination. My baby brother was about 7 months old when she started coming out during the day. My mom was a teacher at the time and was able to stay home with us during summer vacation. It was lunchtime. We were watching a movie quietly downstairs while the baby napped. There were noises upstairs, like something dropped to the ground. We listened for a second before my mom ran up. She thought the baby had fallen out of his crib. We opened the door and found him asleep. There was some weird skit on the floor. It took us a while to figure out it was drywall or something. There was a crawl space to small attic where the AC and insulation could be reached. It was barely big enough to get into and a good 9 feet from the ground. It also had to be pushed up and slid over to open. There was a visible gap. The carpet was a really ugly dark blue, so we could see white ducking spots on the ground like something was dragged from one side of the room to where the crib was. It stopped right in front of it. My mom checked the closet and called my stepdad. He couldn't leave work, so we stayed downstairs until he got home and checked the crawl space. We have never had animals. It's really difficult for most things to live in Arizona, so wildlife is pretty rare in that area. He didn't find anything or signs of anything living up there. This happened every other day for 2 weeks. We really didn't know what to make of it. My mom thought it might be the AC sanctioning the opening up. It stopped and didn't happen again for 2.5 years when my baby sister was born and stayed in the same crib. Again, it happened on and off for a few weeks and never again. The AC never popped that opening open again. To keep my own solo experiences brief, I had a period of 3 months when I straight up did not sleep. I went crazy. Every night I felt like my bed was shaking. The instant I laid my head, it would vibrate. The metal frame would sway. I'd feel like someone was pushing the mattress between the baseboards or sitting on the corner. I had my brother touch the frame one night to tell me if the shaking was in my head or not. He said it wasn't, but I'm not so sure if he was just playing into it. I thought I might be having seizures or something. At one point, I got so frustrated I started sleeping on the couch downstairs with the dog. I started hearing whispers too, not a noise that sounded odd, but someone calling my name. My name has 3 ducking syllables. I would be in my room, door open, doing something at night after my parents went to bed. It was a female voice, but it sounded off. I don't know how to explain it. The downstairs really scared me after the lights went out, so I never went down, but I did walk to the balcony to look down. I never saw anything, but the whispering would stop when I got close. My brother started hearing it too. He's kind of weird. His life's dream has been enlisting in the army, so his reaction was always getting his knife and walking right downstairs to confront it. He'd turn on the lights and look around before coming back up. He slept on my floor a few nights because he was convinced she wanted me. We had prior hunting experiences, which led to my parents making jokes that the ghosts follow us. They didn't pay much attention to it at this time when it was quiet. One night, my parents went out with the babies. My brother and I were in our rooms, doors open per usual. We started hearing something weird. I thought it was the wind. It got louder until it was clear a woman was ducking, wailing. I know it sounds crazy, but it was so clear. We hid in my room for what felt like hours, calling my mom. For some reason, it didn't occur to us to call the police. The crying stopped. We hatched a plan to run for the stairs and out the nearest door. All of the lights were on in the house, and my brother had his stupid knives. It's like it knew we were going to leave. We heard shuffling outside the door and maybe breathing. It could have been air conditioning. We kind of decided that we were ready to die, unlocked the door and booked it. The crying started again, and it was clear it was in my parents' room. We stood outside the property line for an hour waiting for them to come home, watching the house. No one could have gotten out without us seeing. We had huge windows lining the upstairs hallway that showed everything with the lights on. My parents made fun of us, and still do, about that night. A few other incidents include my baby brother talking to the man upstairs. He'd stand in front of the balcony and talk up to someone. He told us the man was hiding in my room. He talked about the man in the window and would ask who's that, directed at the doors at night. I don't want to talk about all of it, but there were so many instances of voices, doors slamming and things being knocked over in my room that I thought I was losing my mind. I moved out at 18 and come back occasionally, usually to babysit. Apparently, my reluctant believer mother and absolute skeptic stepdad watched a coffee pot jump off the counter. They also were sitting outside having a fire open evening when they saw a figure in the balcony window of their bedroom. It was a tall man, but my stepdad still needed urging to go upstairs. It appeared a second time, closer to where the nursery door was. My mom said she had horrible dreams about a man in the corner of her room after that. She was present for many of the times we heard footsteps upstairs, doors slamming when the AC was off, etc., but she always denied there being anything wrong. My parents left town with the kids for a week. At this point, I'm 19 and living happily an hour away. My mom begged me to check on my brother and stayed a few nights for the weekend. I arrived during the evening after I got off of work. I asked how it had been alone. He said he was fine, he just didn't go upstairs at night and minded his business. He said if he ignored it and tried not to get scared, then it ignored him. He felt safe with the dog. We were watching YouTube and eating when we started to hear a deep noise. At first I thought it was a bike or one of the small buggies people drove out there. Then I noticed it was holding a tune. It was humming. The dog had a weird thing about staring into the bathroom if the door was open, which was scary at night. This time, the door was closed and he still stood up and stared. The noise was so deep, it sounded like it couldn't be human, but it was definitely melodic. There's nothing I could figure out to explain it. My brother and I just kind of looked at each other. Then a door slammed upstairs and we decided to duck off and go on a walk. When we got back, I decided I would sleep in my parents' room. It didn't feel right to stay in the kids' room, but looking back, it would have been best to stay close to my brother. I fell asleep surprisingly easy. I guess about 2 hours passed before my brother slammed the door open. The house smelled like it was burning. Not really like a fire smell, but like burning plastic and trash. I was panicked. I was the adult and didn't know what to do. We checked the house. I turned off the air conditioning thinking it might be on fire. We opened all the windows and fell asleep on the couches downstairs. The next day the smell was still lingering but less overwhelming. The air conditioner was fine when I turned it back on. Like usual, the day was fine. The next night, my brother and I went on a Jack-in-the-Box run. It might have taken 30 minutes. We arrived home to a mess of blood, vomit and skit. The dog was sick all over the living room. We immediately took him to an emergency vet, certain he was dying. They checked him for everything they could and gave him a clean bill. When we got home, all hell broke loose. My brother and I were cleaning up the mess with the door open for airflow. There was absolutely insane banging noises from upstairs. We hadn't locked up on the way out. My brother thought someone had snuck in and was trashing the upstairs. He went up to check and I hung downstairs ready to call the police. Nothing happened. Nothing even seemed out of place. We kept cleaning but the noise started almost immediately. It kind of sounded like someone was shouting behind a wall of cement. I couldn't tell the gender. My brother told me he had been fine until I got there, that I could leave if I wanted. I totally did, and I didn't go back. My parents sold the house this year. During the interim of the move, they stayed in an Airbnb. My brother lived really close to his work, so he stayed in the house with the dog for a few weeks. This story is just his own, so I'm still not sure if I believe it. He's kind of weird, but not one to embellish. He had been hearing the usual things, even his name being called in the night, but ignored it all. His friends had been coming over to keep him company. The last day he was supposed to finish moving, he brought a friend. He said he felt they were being watched the whole time they cleared the place out, and his friend left him to lock up. They got into the car facing the house when they noticed the blinds were open. They were definitely closed on the way out. His friend claims he saw them open from the side of his eye. My brother says there was a woman squatting in front of a downstairs window, close to where he had just left from. She was pale, her nose was hooked, and her hair was black and stingy. Again, classic horror movie ghost. He said she had black eyes with visible white dots in the middle, inside-out eyes as he called them, and she was smiling. He said it took him a second of shock to realize she was looking right at him. He felt sick, like she could walk right out and get him. The burned rubber when his friend snapped out of it and they screamed at each other all the way down the road about what they saw. He called me right after to explain it, but I was with friends and not really willing to listen. What ducks me up is that my mom thought he had a psychotic break. He went into his room and cried all night at the Airbnb. She thought something happened with his girlfriend. My brother is not a crier. I haven't seen him do it since we were little. When we got together and talked about it, his eyes teared up then too. He said he didn't know why, but he knew she wanted to kill him. He drew a picture of her. Let me know if you are interested in seeing it. It's not great, but it still fills me with the deepest foreboding. It took me a while to realize that I saw her too, just once in my bedroom almost 5 years ago. Seeing her suddenly made sense. I knew it didn't feel like a woman, but it felt feminine. It felt like something pretending to be a woman. Anyways, I know this is long. Feel free to offer your opinion. My ex brought this up today. We dated all through high school and had a few experiences together that she recounts as her only paranormal encounters. I would love to still think this was my own delusion, but it was shared by too many people to be. Maybe a few things are explainable, but most of it isn't. It's affected me so deeply, I'm still terrified that if I think too much about her, she'll follow us a state away. I also forgot to mention, we heard word from neighbors that the previous family had 12 people, Mormons, living in the house we could only fit 6 into. They were really weird according to multiple families, and they moved in with 5 kids and left with 4. We heard a toddler drowned in the upstairs bathtub. No idea which one or if this is true. We couldn't find any documentation. That's all I have. I'll answer any questions. Thank you, Lola, the author. Thank you for watching, everyone. If you already haven't, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any new episodes. See you again soon, and until then, please, be safe.